Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kelly Paletta, Director of Sales and Marketing at EXP Technical, and this is an introduction to Microsoft 365 Copilot. Joining me today is Austin Hampton from PAX8. Hey, Austin, in just a few seconds, can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your role as a productivity specialist at PAX8?
Yeah, and thank you for the introduction there. As Kelly mentioned, my name is Austin Hampton. I am a productivity solutions consultant here at Pax8, which is really just a fancy Pax8 way of saying I am a Microsoft subject matter expert and technical representative. And I'm aligned with Kelly and the folks over at EXP, and I help them better understand Microsoft licensing, go to market strategies, and ultimately just try to help make the Microsoft process much easier than without me.
Yeah, well, and thanks for joining us. And we have I've seen a preview of what we're about to share. And so we have some cool things to share with our audience today, that's for sure. So I'm going to, before we get started in that, I'll go through a little bit of the typical housekeeping agenda items. Our presentation is going to be, there's going to be a lot of on-screen demo. You're welcome to ask questions as we go. I will try to moderate those. So if we don't catch them in line, which we might not be able to, we'll at least batch them up and go through those at the end. One question that always comes up is people ask if this event is being recorded. And in fact, it is. So you don't have to take meticulous notes as we go here. This will be available. It might take me a few days, maybe next week sometime by the time the recording's edited and available for you, but that will be available for you soon. So feel free to ask questions. Don't worry about taking meticulous notes. And before we get started, I want to try something new if I can do it. Wish me luck here. So I want to let's see, I'm going to launch a poll. I want to be a little bit more interactive in these events. And if I did it right, and I'm going to abandon it if it doesn't work out, but if I did it right, you should see on your screen a 2-question poll that asks you about your experience with artificial intelligence, which is which of the following tools have you used? And then the second question is, how often do you use those tools? And there's no real purpose to this other than to get a gauge of what people's experience is. So we'll leave that open for just another second here. Oh, it looks like, wow, I can see the results. I don't know if you can yet, Austin, but a huge percentage of respondents have used ChatGPT already, 77%. I'll leave
Oh,
it open
wow.
for, yeah, which is good. And those of you that have used ChatGPT, you know that it's been available for just about a year now. I think it was November that it was available publicly, so about a year now. And Microsoft has made significant investment in ChatGPT. And what we're going to talk about today is some of the integration there. So I'm going to give it about 5 more seconds. I think we're about done. I'm going to end the poll, and I'll just share it. I think it'll share in the chat. Last chance, going once, twice, end the poll, share results. You should be able to see that now. I need to move it out of my way, but that just gives us some perspective on our audience here and their familiarity. And it looks like we have a high degree of familiarity with artificial intelligence, which is a good starting point. So I'm going to jump in with a question for you, Austin, and that is a big umbrella question. But one of the things that's, as a Microsoft end user, that's kind of frustrating is that they tend to give products one big name for everything. And I see Copilot everywhere. I see it associated with many different, practically every marketing release Microsoft comes out with today has the word Copilot in it. And so I'm wondering, can you explain to me and to our audience really, what is Microsoft Copilot? What is Microsoft 365 Copilot? When they say Bing Chat Enterprise is your Copilot, what do these terms mean? So can we start there with general definitions?
Yeah. In true Microsoft fashion, the naming is always a little hard to wrap our heads around, but that's okay. The way that I think about it is Copilot is really at its core a brand name. It is Microsoft's brand name for their AI products. And depending on where we are interacting with it, what the data set is, and what the use case is, we're going to have a little bit of a different name, and that's going to dictate what our experience is. So Copilot is the brand, and there are many Copilot products, is the way that I would think about it. And so we've got Windows Copilot, which is now native to Windows 11 Pro and Windows 11 Enterprise, that is meant to use the large language model and AI to make searching your internal file repository locally better. That's what that's for. We've got Security Copilot, which is much more on the security administrative side and analyzing your telemetry data and making actionable insights. We've got Bing Chat, which was recently rebranded to Microsoft Copilot. But that is the large language model where the internet is the data set, and that is the consumer version. So anybody with an Edge browser on a PC can open it up and start interacting with Microsoft Copilot, what was Bing Chat. If you have a work or school account and you're signed in and you have the right licensing, you can use what was Bing Chat Enterprise, which is now Microsoft Copilot Enterprise, which is the same large language model using the internet as the data set. The only difference is there's some additional protections around the inputs a user provides to the system and the outputs the system provides a user. And then we have M365 Copilot, which is the large language model that is leveraging the data within your tenancy, your Microsoft environment, or the data that has been actively integrated into that Microsoft environment to be able to search, ask questions of, pull insights, summarize all the things that the 77% of the users already know what ChatGPT can do. So I'm glad we have this audience. The messaging is gonna resonate really well with you, especially when we're not starting from a place of what's ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, and they're ahead of the curve, and that's great. And that's the point of this event. You know, one of our values at EXP is share knowledge, share success. And we're doing this to help, for one, our clients, but really the region. There are a lot of folks attending that are not our clients, but we want to help them get ahead of this because these are tools that I believe very soon we'll all be using every day. And so it's great to see that the people in attendance, it's not surprising, I guess, that they are the type that are early adopters or at least early investigators. And so to circle back and summarize, so it sounds to me like whenever I see Copilot associated with Microsoft, it's an umbrella term that means artificial intelligence. It's one flavor or another. It's a large language model. It's generative AI for creating images or some other artificial intelligence tool that's been integrated into a Microsoft product. Maybe I'm misinterpreting.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
You know, we both laughed about this, a little tangent, but Bing Chat Enterprise, it frustrated me that it didn't have Copilot in the name because everything else had Copilot in the name. And then they'd say Bing Chat Enterprise, your Copilot for searching and working. And it's like, wait, you're confusing me. Okay, well, moving on. So how, and this is where we get to the good stuff, but can you talk a little bit about how it works? So how do these tools work?
Yeah, so easiest way to talk about how the tool works is to go over a little diagram that I find incredibly helpful. So for those of you that are familiar with ChatGPT, you will know that ChatGPT is a large language model that allows...
And I'm gonna interrupt you because we have a question in the chat that asks specifically, what is the meaning of a large language model? So let's be sure that we define that too before you get further into it.
Yeah, so taking it even a step back, what is a large language model? A large language model is a AI system that has been fed, I believe ChatGPT was 130 billion data points that is trained on human language, written human language specifically. And what we have done with that is given this artificial intelligence the ability to understand written human language, person, place, object, thing, all of the little nuances that we really take for granted as humans that learn to speak as infants just through osmosis and being around our family and their friends and just taking in all of this language and learning what each component means and how they relate to each other. And so that's essentially what a large language model is. It is a artificial intelligence system that has just been trained on written language to understand that, and then taking it a step further beyond just understanding it. Once it can understand the written language and understand meaning, tone, inflection, it can start to do some really cool things for us. We can ask it questions in a human language answer or in a human language prompt, looking for information, analyzing information, aggregating information, pulling insights, making predictions, and give that back to us in a human language answer so that the layperson can interact with it without having any requisite knowledge of coding or technical skill whatsoever.
Right, right. So if I can interrupt and summarize a little bit. So the large means that it's trained on the entire internet or, just huge, huge volumes of data. The language part is that it understands not only how sentences are structured, but it also works a lot like predictive text on your phone, that it knows what word tends to come after another one. And it's so good at that that it seems like you're talking to a person. It seems like a native English speaker when you're interacting with it. Is that is that an accurate summary? And I want to, before we move on too, I don't want to spend too much time on, on defining the terms too.
Yeah, no, that seems like a very accurate summary for me.
Sure.
And so kind of now that we've defined what a large language model is, Copilot is a large language model. And OpenAI really came out with the first marketable solution of a large language model. And for the 70+% of us that have experienced it, you know what we're talking about. For those of you that
It's
might
uncanny.
not, it is
I'm sorry.
yeah, no, it's absolutely uncanny what you can do there. And so Microsoft really has been waiting to figure out what the next direction of technology was going to be. And they got wind of OpenAI back in 2019. They formed a partnership and they pledged a whole bunch of money. And once OpenAI's large language model got to the point where it became a viable, usable solution, Microsoft, through their investment, was able to copy what OpenAI's ChatGPT's large language model code, take that code, run it in the Microsoft data centers, which we know as their cloud is Azure, and they've created Azure OpenAI. And so we have this large language model that's running in Azure. And when we purchase the $30 add-on license and we assign it to a user, the very first thing that happens is all of the data that is within the Microsoft environment is cataloged and indexed in place. And I want to reiterate that it is cataloged and it is indexed, but it is done so in place, in the environment, in the server it already lives in, which turns it from data to a functional data set.
And I'm going to interrupt again there. So when you say the environment, you mean a SharePoint site, OneDrive, a file server as well. The organization's computing environment, not the outside world in the cloud, but the entity, that ABC company that's buying a license for Microsoft 365 Copilot, correct?
Yes, and specifically the data that resides within their Microsoft tenancy, which is just the definition of the segregation of digital space that houses your data and keeps it separate from all other Microsoft users' data. Right. So everything that's in that Microsoft environment, all of the user information, SharePoint information, OneDrive information, Teams information, all of that data is just sitting there, and it's sitting in the Microsoft graph. And Copilot catalogs and indexes that data in place so that it becomes searchable, it becomes queryable, it becomes a data set that can be analyzed and pulled insights out of. And so once we've got the license signed to a user, the data is then converted into this functional data set. A user can start interacting with that data through the Copilot, M365 Copilot chatbot. And so the Copilot chatbot is going to live in all of your different Microsoft applications. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Whiteboard, Power BI, Dynamics,
Teams.
Power Automate, Teams. It's the whole, basically everything. Everything is getting a variant of Copilot injected into it if you have the license. And then depending on which application you are interacting with the chatbot in is going to determine your user experience and the ultimate use case of what you're trying, the use case of what the end result is going to look like. And so with Word, we have a writing coach.
Are you there, Austin? Looks like you froze. So I'll fill while he's reconnecting. And that is that Copilot becomes your artificial intelligence assistant within each of the tools that you use. And so within Word, it can summarize long documents and create a summary. It can write a first draft of documents that you want. And when Austin mentions that it catalogs your environment, what it means is that it's trained on your SharePoint data so that it can create documents like PowerPoint presentations or Word documents or sales proposals based on a library of documents that you have that are available to you. And I think Austin has logged out, and I hope he's logging in because he has most of the presentation material for you. But what we've seen so far is, I'll give you an example of what we did in preparation was that at EXP Technical, we have security awareness training at EXP Academy. And one of our clients said, I don't want to take the online video training. I want you to deliver that training in person. And so what we did with Austin's help was I gave him a transcript of all of the Microsoft 360 or all of the EXP Academy courses and asked him to take that, input that into Word, summarize that, and then create a PowerPoint presentation that we could use with the appropriate bullet points and the appropriate information. So we can work from that for a live online presentation or a live in-person presentation. And what ended up happening was it took about 5 minutes for us to create that. Whereas normally in my, normal, if I were doing that manually, it may take 3 or 4 hours for me to summarize a bunch of video content into a document that I can use, that I can share with another presenter, and that I can then use as a foundation for a PowerPoint presentation. And now I have a question coming in too. Do the documents have to be saved to SharePoint in order to be used in Word or PowerPoint? And Austin may be better equipped to answer that, but I believe that if you're training it on your data, that is correct. So if you're using your SharePoint or OneDrive, but it needs to be in your computing environment for you to use Copilot to summarize that. You could also copy and paste, and this is where it's a little bit different. So for those of you that use ChatGPT right now, you know that if you want to summarize a document in ChatGPT, you copy and paste it, and then it may summarize, or it may, you may be able to manipulate it within ChatGPT. But one of the dangers is that it's saving that data, and it's also using that data to train for future conversations. And one of the benefits of working within your own computing environment and within your own tenant is that your data is not exposed, so they're not the same security concerns. And I'm going to pause for a second because I want to be sure that we're able to get Austin connected back in here. Bear with me for a second. There he is. Austin, we lost you for about 3 minutes. Can you hear us?
I can. So sorry about that, everybody.
So let's jump to the illustration. So let's I think what people wanted to see is how this works in real life. And I described the situation where one of the examples where I gave you a transcript of the content at EXP Academy, and we were able to very quickly create a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Can we use that? I mean, I know you had some case studies available. Is that a good one for a starting point here?
Yeah, of course. Let me go ahead and reshare the screen. All
Okay.
right. Is it up?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, in preparation for our presentation today, Kelly went ahead and sent me over a transcript for their security awareness training course. And as we can see, we've got a good table of contents, 16 pages, and this is just pretty dense.
Right. It's talking head video transcript, so it's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words. We got a little bit of formatting, but a lot of words. And so what we were able to do with Copilot is ask Copilot to take this transcript and generate a summary. And so we went from 16 pages to 7 pages, still a little on the dense side, but
Because
we
we asked it.
always but we asked it. We asked it to be a little bit more literal and stay true to the transcript.
Exactly.
And the cool thing about Copilot is when you're having it generate information for you, especially if you're having it create written content, you've always got this regenerate button. And then you can also give it feedback as to why you would like it to be regenerated or what you would like it to be, how you would like it to be different. If you don't provide that, Microsoft will just guess. And it's actually a little button sometimes just to sit there and hit that regenerate and see what comes out. And so once we've made this 7-page summary, oh goodness, now move this bar. Okay, there we are. We're able to open
There it
up
is.
PowerPoint and we were able to ask Copilot using my file path from SharePoint to create a presentation from this file. And so we went from 16-page written transcript to a 20 slide deck where it gives us the agenda, the introduction, module 1. Then I don't have to go through every single slide, but when Kelly and I were talking earlier today, we were just kind of running a thought experiment about if we did this on our own without an AI, which is crazy to think that eventually that's going to be considered the legacy method is, oh, did you write that by hand? To go from a 16-page, 17-page transcript into a 7-page detailed summary that is shareable, I think we landed on 90 minutes to maybe 2 hours, depending on how
Depending on the
quickly.
depending on the familiarity with the content. Yeah.
And then to go from this summary document to anything in a slide deck, what did we land on there?
Oh, it's at least another 90, well, probably more closer to 2 hours to create 20 slides and to obsess over fonts and the size of titles and all of those things that you get sucked into following them down the rabbit hole.
And finding this digital Trojan
Right.
horse image, and then setting the resizing it appropriately, setting the gradient of opacity so that it flows. This slide alone could be 15-20 minutes on just a skilled PowerPoint presentation user, let alone
Oh yeah. And yeah,
someone
when you're looking
who's.
for images, you can spend hours doing that.
And so for what this took us, even with a couple iterations, at
Less than 10
most,
minutes.
yeah,
Yeah,
10
closer
minutes
to
to
5
do.
probably. Yeah, it took practically no time. And of course, this isn't the end result. Um, I'm going to have to get in and edit. I'm going to have to customize so that it fits more the tone that I want to present to our audience. But this got me 90% of the way there in minutes instead of spending hours working on this.
And then something else to just call out is you can ask it to reorganize it. You can ask it to actually, now that we've made the presentation, we can ask for a summary. So we can go from raw data to summarized data to presentation data, back to summarized data, or reorganizing it,
And
all within minutes.
the important thing for me as a sales rep is sure it saves me some time, but it gives me time to focus on sales related activity rather than administrative activity, which is where the real value is as well. And there was a question that came in that speaks to this, and I'm not sure if I answered it correctly, but the question came in that is, do documents have to be saved in SharePoint in order to be used in Word or PowerPoint? Do they have to be in SharePoint or OneDrive, or where is the source material for something like this? Where does it have to live?
Yeah, so the source material does need to live in the cloud, whether that is your personal OneDrive or the company's organizational SharePoint architecture. And in order for you to pull the information and use the data, you need to have access to it. So that's a really good thing to just kind of call out here. Copilot will pull whatever information you ask of it, provided you have access.
Right. And there are two questions. You're one step ahead of the chat. I don't know if you're reading it or not, but two people have questions about this. If you can protect sensitive data, HR data, PHI, if you're regulated by HIPAA. So we had planned to talk about this a little bit later, but maybe you can jump into that a little bit about what sort of access controls need to be in place or how you protect that sensitive data.
Yeah, so you 100% can protect the sensitive data and really lock down the information within your environment to limit the exposure that Copilot will give to other users. So I don't want you to think about it as Copilot is this omniscient being that we're trying to hide information from. It's really not. It's more of just an agent that is going to catalog and index the data, and provided you have access, it will return it. It doesn't actually do anything with your data, though, from session to session, prompt to prompt. It just sits there in a functional data set, and it only is pulled into the Copilot agent, for lack of a better term, when a specific user prompts for it. So I would think about it less as, how do I protect my data so it won't be a part of the Copilot pool of data that people can access? And think about it more, who should be able to access that HR data, that PII? I'm certain there's at least some people in your organization that it's their job to have access to that, maybe to update it, do things with it. I don't know too much about HR, but I assume that the HR people, they know they want access, they need access, and Copilot for them, since they are authorized users granted access to that sensitive information, could be a tool to help them be better at their job. The question here is, how do I make it so that my HR people can see the HR data and nobody else can?
Right.
And so that is the way that I would think about it. It's a change of thought process, and how do I make sure that my specific users have access to what they need to how do I make sure these specific users only have access to what they need to and explicitly nothing else? And
Right.
that's
Which
how
is
we protect the data in an AI world.
And that's frankly the same concern that businesses have already, even before Copilot. It's, we implement certain controls around sensitive data. So people that, we follow the privilege of least privilege, the policy of least privilege, so that people have access to only the information that they need access to. And there are lots of tools on the back end that EXP Technical can help you out with to ensure that that's the case. The one thing that is a risk, though, and I think you said earlier, it's provided that they have access to it, then they can query this information, or Copilot can bring this into a document that they're working on. But the one thing to be concerned is when you do give people access to this tool, it's a much more powerful way for them to root around on the network. So it is very important that you do an audit beforehand to be sure that the appropriate controls are in place, that people don't already have inappropriate access, because they can say, hey, what about this sensitive HR data? And Copilot, because they already have this access but didn't know how to use it, may actually enable them to do that. And again, EXP can help you with that, to be sure that the appropriate controls are in place and the appropriate rights and permissions and privileges are assigned to individual users. Another security question, but then I want to jump back to, I think you have a couple of other illustrations too. And I want to show people more than just PowerPoint, because that's just kind of a sidetrack. But the other question was, are you able to see the types of queries your employees are making to Copilot? What sort of audit controls are there within Copilot, or are there any right now?
So this is a good question. And the short answer is you can't, there are no audit controls. There is no visibility into how your users are using Copilot, at least not today. And that, while seems like it might be concerning, it's actually a massive benefit, because the way that Copilot works, and I'm just going to pull this slide back up, is the data is cataloged and indexed in place, so it's functional. The user asks for the data. Find me this. What is this? Insert your prompt. Copilot processes that human language into math via the process of grounding. It uses the semantic index to find the actual information that they're looking for, and creates an alphanumeric representation of that data, not the actual data itself. So analyze this file, for this Excel file, and tell me the financial trends of my top 5 companies over the last 5 years. Provided all that information is in that Excel and that user has access to it, the alphanumeric representations of the individual data points will be encrypted, sent to this large language model. But again, the actual file, the actual data does not leave. The large language model reorganizes that data, sends it back. There's post-processing, and then it goes back to the user in pretty much real time. Once that prompt is completed, Microsoft wipes the memory, deletes everything, does not save any history of the search, a cache of the information. It doesn't use that information to then train additional searches later on. It is like it never happened. It is a one-time blip in the lifespan of Copilot in the environment. And from prompt to prompt, Microsoft has no memory of any of the previous prompts, which makes the auditing very hard. But the benefit of it is no one can access it. If you can access a list of the queries that your users have been and trying to see what they've been using Copilot to do, that means somebody else theoretically could too. Whether they broke into your environment through a breach, whether they broke in through a Microsoft backdoor, that information was saved and auditable, it could be taken and misused against us, which is just not possible. So while you can't audit it, you can't know how and what they're using it for, no one else can either. So kind of a double-edged sword there. While it might be annoying on the administrative and management side, on the security and the compliance side, it is a godsend.
Right. That's a key distinction between ChatGPT, which right now I can go into ChatGPT and see my entire history of every query every prompt that I've given ChatGPT, and it exists somewhere outside of my control. And not only can ChatGPT be training on my conversations, but theoretically, because it exists somewhere outside of my control, someone else could potentially get access to that. And to summarize the current round of security questions, I think the summary is just to say that if somebody has inappropriate access now in your computing environment, it's a problem now. And if they have Copilot, they will also have inappropriate access and Copilot. So the important thing is to be concerned that the appropriate layers of control that are in place to protect sensitive data. There are a few questions too about can we see it? So can you jump, Austin, into other examples, illustrations, maybe even, are you brave enough to open things live? Or I know we had a few things that were
you guys,
prepared.
there's a lot of questions in the chat. I feel like I could burn up the rest of the time in the presentation just going one by one down the list. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the live demo.
Yeah,
so
let's really show the product.
So as I mentioned, Copilot, M365 Copilot is going to live in all of your applications. One application that we tend to forget about that is a Microsoft application is the Edge browser. It is. It's one of the applications that's included with your licensing. It's also free, but Edge browser is going to be the most global reaching version of M365 Copilot, meaning that when I'm in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, I'm a little bit more limited in my use case and what I can do with it, while M365 Copilot accessed from the Edge browser is going to be able to go anywhere in my environment that I have access to. So it's like it has the same permissions that I do. So if I have access to a data set, I can query it. And so if you guys want to follow along, go ahead and open up the Edge browser, and you're going to click this little Copilot logo in the upper right. If you didn't know what the Copilot logo is, there it is. Couldn't tell you why it's that, but that's what it is. And so when you click that little logo, unless you also have an early access license like myself, you're not going to see this M365 chat. This right here is M365 Copilot. Bing Chat is the Bing Chat / Bing Chat Enterprise version of Copilot, large language model that uses the internet as the data set. And so with Bing Chat Enterprise, we know it's enterprise because we see this green shield with a status protected. Your personal and company data are protected in this chat. With the consumer version, we just have an Edge browser. You might be on a home or a personal laptop. We're not going to see that protected thing. Doesn't mean that Microsoft is necessarily misusing our data with the consumer side, but on the enterprise, paid for, provided with a license, they have documentation showing we are not using your data for anything.
It's explicitly stated.
And similarly to the M365 Copilot, where once the input is input, the information is found, and the output is returned to you, the data in the memory is wiped. Same thing with Bing Chat Enterprise. And so while you can, in a single session, i.e. you open up a fresh Edge browser, you click in, you can see a list of your history in that single session. But the moment you close this X and you relaunch, it's back to scratch. So same thing, it's deleted, it's not cached, it's not saved, meaning it cannot be taken, stolen, or used against you in the court of law. Just didn't. That
or
one.
By the bad guys.
Or by the bad guys.
Yeah.
And so when we're in Bing Chat, we have the ability to help us write, compare, analyze. We can have it choose a conversation style. Do we want it to be precise? Do we want it to be creative, or somewhere in the middle? And additionally, we have the ability to be in the chat versus the compose. Write me something about. I'm a professional or a casual, enthusiastic, informational, funny, or succinct tone. What is the format / where am I utilizing this content? What is the length? And generate the draft. Whereas this is going to be more of, I'm looking for information that is not available within my tenancy. So I do always like to do the Bing Chat demo on demand. So what should we ask it, Kelly? What should we ask it for?
Oh gosh, now you're putting me on the spot. Let's ask, can you summarize best practices regarding data backup and disaster recovery? Just tried to ask something kind of broad.
And so right now it's searching the known internet for best practices for data backup, disaster recovery, and it's generating our responses.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing that I do want to call out that I think is huge that Microsoft does with Copilot and Bing Chat is they very elegantly addressed the hallucination problem. Really quick, the hallucination problem is when a generative AI model generates false information that is then used to support an analysis or an argument or an opinion that it formed. We've seen ChatGPT do this. We've seen the AI solution that was built for legal firms to read through legal precedents and analyze and help, where it just created fake cases, and you
Right.
reference those fake cases in real cases, and the AI was disbarred virtually, and there was a lot of punitive action taken upon that law firm. So Microsoft addressed this with the most elegant solution possible. What if we just cited? What if we just gave our references? What if we cited the references? So each one of these statements develop a comprehensive backup plan. This involves periodically creating or updating one or more copies. Well, we'll notice that when I hover over it, it's hyperlinked. And so I can see that this is an article from IBM, relatively reliable source of information around cloud and computing. And I have the opportunity, well, if I don't think that this is exactly right, or maybe it was a misaligned analysis, I can go look at the source material. OpenAI and ChatGPT just does not do that, at least not yet. And so because of that, when we query ChatGPT or any other generative AI model that's specific around large language, we don't know how reputable the reference material that it found to give us the answer is. And as we know, the internet is an amazing, amazing place, full of all of the known, well, just full of all of
disinformation.
well, it's full of a ton of great information and a ton of bad information. Right. And ChatGPT doesn't know which one is better. Copilot doesn't really either, but at least with Copilot, they are giving you the sources so you can make that judgment call yourself. So that's Bing Chat. And then with M365 Copilot.
Yeah, here comes the good stuff, right? So this is the stuff that people don't have access to right now.
Exactly. And so while this Bing Chat uses the internet as our data set, Copilot uses the data that is within my Microsoft environment that I have access to as the data set. I have the ability to see what's new from different people in my organization, to get caught up on Teams messages or emails. If I've been out of office for a few days, I can quickly come in here, select a person, and get key updates. I can ask for key info from different files that I have in OneDrive. I can ask it to draft an FAQ based off of a document. I'll use this one as an example since we already showed the security awareness training course summary.
Wow.
And while Bing Chat and Bing Chat Enterprise give us access to information that we don't have, Microsoft Copilot gives us access to information that we already have, and it helps us analyze it, helps us aggregate it, helps us make better decisions faster.
Right. So, I'm going to address a question that came up, and I think this was when you're demonstrating Bing Chat Enterprise, and the question was, is this essentially the same as ChatGPT, except it doesn't save prompts? Bing Chat Enterprise kind of is. I mean, that's the protection. One is that it doesn't save your prompts. The other is that it gives you citation information. But Microsoft 365 Copilot uses that same artificial intelligent assistant, but it's trained on your data. And that's a significant difference between ChatGPT, and it's secured the same way that your computing environment is secured. So for example, for me as a sales rep, I often get our requests for proposals, and they are extremely laborious to complete. They all seem to ask the same 40 questions, 40 different ways. If I could train an AI assistant to look at all the proposals that I've written before and answer each of those questions, either individually or collectively, based on how I've answered them in the past, it would save me a tremendous amount of time, and it would not be using just general information that's out on the web. It would be using information that is specific to my organization, that lives within my tenant, that is otherwise, protected and secure and of concern to my organization. Kind of speaking over you there, Austin, but
oh no, you're all good. You made me just think of a really good thing I want to demo here.
And the last question Dave asked, can we just talk about the capabilities of Copilot instead of trying to compare it to ChatGPT? Sure.
Well,
but at the root, it is ChatGPT, though, because Microsoft has invested in OpenAI, and they have integrated literally that tool into their products, but in a way that's protected and that's trained on your data. But anyway, go ahead with what you were.
Oh no, that was it. I was gonna say, the comparison between Copilot and ChatGPT, it's fair to compare it, but if we were to peel back all the layers and we just looked at the ones and the zeros, they are identical pieces of software.
Right.
Microsoft gave OpenAI $13 billion, and OpenAI let them copy their code. So they are the same thing, just with some different parameters around the technology that makes them different products. And also they run Microsoft Copilot, and all their stuff runs in the Microsoft data centers. OpenAI has all of their compute done on their data centers. But yeah, and so, but getting back to that, Kelly, so one cool thing that Copilot can do is it can, at least for me and for other people that send and receive a lot of emails, I don't know if anybody on the call has ever found themselves sending the exact same email 30, 40, 50 times. And you have really two options there. You can hard key it out each time, or you can write a template that you can repurpose and send. And so with Copilot, you can ask it to write a template based on emails that you've already sent, written in your voice. So finishing up this little prompt here, final emails I have ever sent in response to Copilot not being available yet, and what users can do now to get started. And create an email template for me to use written in my voice. Because isn't the worst thing about automatic canned AI generated emails and templates that you can just tell? You can just tell that this is a canned thing. This is a marketing thing. The person that I work with this isn't how he writes. This isn't how he speaks.
Right.
It's the uncanny valley thing, right? We can just tell that something isn't quite right. We can't put our finger on it, but it's not quite right. And so this is an example that I brought up specifically because Microsoft announced that Copilot was going to be available November 11th. It was going to be generally available, and they did not include the fine print, which was November 11th. It was generally available to enterprise customers on an active enterprise agreement, willing to purchase 300 seats on a minimum and ride those out until the end of their commitment term. I knew that on November 11th, I was going to get slammed. I knew that my inbox constantly was just going to be, where's Copilot? How do I get it? Why can't I see it? How do I use it? How do I get it? Microsoft said it's available. And so I had Copilot write me a template, and I made some minor changes to it, but I was able to just respond to like 47 emails almost instantaneously, as opposed to sitting down and putting together a thoughtful response for each email saying almost the exact same thing.
And it's much more sophisticated than just a mail merge. It's generating content without you having to do it. And
exactly. And the cool thing about it is that it used my content that I've already hard handwritten to generate that new content. And that's really the whole thing about what large language models are, is leveraging existing content, existing words, existing statements, existing data aggregating it, analyzing it, and creating something new from it.
So here's another example then, or another illustration. Suppose I'm somebody that attends a lot of Teams meetings,
Mm-hmm.
and and they all seem to run together, and I can't remember what was discussed. Can you talk a little bit to the integration of Copilot within Teams?
Most certainly. So with Copilot within Teams, we have the ability to record and transcribe a meeting to get automatically generated AI notes, and have the ability to come back and ask questions. So this was just a little example call that Kelly and I got on a little bit earlier today, so we could show the example here. So recap the meeting, key topics, evaluate proposition for M365 Copilot, next steps for the demo. It was a short one, but if you're on a very long meeting with a lot of different people talking, and you're struggling to take notes and stay on top of things and stay engaged, you can just let Copilot run the transcription and then get the automatic meeting notes generated for you, and then later come back in and ask questions of it.
And it looks like it's kind of trained to look for accountability, right? I mean, it says next steps. And so it looks like it's intelligent enough to know that when somebody says, hey, I'll do this, it captures that and highlights that in a summary of the meeting, which, again, speaks to accountability within your organization and gives you a third-party source of truth for those sorts of things, so you can keep track and stay on top of timelines.
Perfect. Yeah, it looks like we didn't run it as long as we could have to make that a little bit more rich. Because yeah, this is our transcript. There we go. And also here's the one that we just kind of generated a little bit earlier.
Right. This was just that you had it running when we were running through when you were generating the PowerPoint presentation for me.
Yes.
Oh, let's see what it says, if it'll recognize. So
And
I was enthusiastic. Oh, yeah, and it even uses the word enthusiastic. And I'll tell you why I'm enthusiastic. I think frankly, there are problems. So I'm pessimistic too, and I'm not generally an enthusiastic person. So there are definitely security concerns. So you do want to be sure that you have the appropriate controls in place before you grant your end users access to Copilot. That's one concern. Another is it doesn't work perfectly yet, but this is version 1. And what I get enthusiastic about is being able to delegate all of this grunt work, because in sales, a lot of work is repetitive and a lot of it is administrative. And I look forward to the day where I can delegate a lot of that work to an AI assistant, because I don't have an assistant and can't afford one, but an AI assistant would be a godsend for me, especially given the example where you saved me hours in generating a PowerPoint presentation by putting that AI assistant to work to do that. So again, what gets me excited is maybe not the first version of Copilot, but I'm looking forward to using that when I have access to it. But it's where this will be a year from now, or 3 or 5 years from now. I dream of a day where I can throw a bunch of receipts at an AI assistant and it submits my expense reports. And we're not quite there, but that may be in the not too distant future.
most certainly. And yeah, just to reiterate that, this is the dumbest version it's ever going to be.
Yep.
It will never get worse than this. It will only get better. It will only iterate.
That's hardly a resounding, ringing endorsement, but I hear you. I'm saying the
Well,
same thing.
but yeah, it just, it's a system that's going to learn. It's going to evolve. It's going to get better. And so I'm personally incredibly excited about it. As thinking about this like very long term, I am of the generation that like experienced a radical amount of change around technology all in my life, my short lifetime so far. I'm 31 years old. I remember cassette tapes, VHS, DVD, HD DVD, Blu-ray, now streaming. It's pre-internet, post-internet, pre-smartphone, post-smartphone. All of the generations that come after me, Gen Z, they don't know a world without having a smartphone.
Right.
My children, luckily enough if I have them, won't know a world without AI. And so this is just the very, very beginning of a long journey of interacting with and integrating with and leveraging AI to be the tool that it's supposed to be, which is helping people make better decisions faster.
Mm-hmm.
And I did want to get to one question.
I'll bet I know what it is, but go on.
Microsoft is notorious for having open access and then leaving it to the admins or users to lock things down and protect it. Is there a feel they are following a similar model here? So you are correct. And this is actually by design. So Microsoft has what is called the model of shared responsibility, meaning that we are going to be responsible for making sure that the infrastructure that houses your data is always up. We are going to be responsible for making sure that your applications always work. The technology itself, we are responsible for creating it, maintaining it, updating it, and keeping it going. The data that you put into the system is your organization's responsibility. Is it secure? Is it safe? Is your environment locked down? How are we mitigating these risks? Because Microsoft can't make one solution that is perfect for everybody. That's impossible. Every customer, every organization, every business is slightly different in enough nuance that it would be impossible to have a one size fits all. And so they make things configurable and they are configured to meet your needs. And so while it does seem frustrating that Microsoft creates all these things and then puts the responsibility on us to keep our data and ourselves secure, it's actually a good thing because again, they're responsible for making sure that your data is accessible and that nobody is stealing it from the Microsoft side. Nobody's walking into a data center, finding your server rack, and then taking a USB and downloading all of your data. They have a ton of security in place to prevent that. No one's hacking into Microsoft servers and stealing your source code and your data. The way that they hack in is they get your username and your password. And if you don't have MFA, they're in, they're off to the races. If they can bypass your MFA, if they can send you a link that you click or a malicious piece of code ends up on your, that's how people get in. They're not breaking in through Microsoft. And so taking that to Copilot, because we know that Microsoft isn't saving your information, storing your information, training the model, there's only one way for your information to be exposed externally in a bad way. And that is somebody
put the controls around it,
breaks in
and
steals it from the access point side.
So we're down to 2 minutes, so I'm going to speed through the last couple of things here. One is we've kind of mentioned it in passing, but getting access to this tool, it is currently only available to enterprise users. Soon, do you know when it will be available to others?
Not yet. We are hopeful that it'll be early 2024, ideally Q1, but as soon as I know, everybody that I work with will also be getting phone calls, emails, blasts. It'll be Christmas morning for everybody, and I'll be letting everybody know.
But Bing Chat Enterprise is available today if you have Microsoft 365 Business Standard, Business Premium, E3, or E5. So one thing that people attending can do if they want to be prepared for Copilot in the future is start interacting with Bing Chat Enterprise. It gives you a protected version of an AI assistant that you can work with. Another question was, do I have to, I guess one is, what does it cost? It's $30 per user. Do I have to roll it out to the entire environment? You do not. So you can give this tool only to select individuals within your organization, which is another way that you can keep track, or another control that you can place on sensitive data. We're nearly out of time. Austin, do you have any last words?
Yeah, I also want to try to rapid fire some of these guys. It is available only as a web via the web. Only data that's stored in the cloud can be used by it. It will be available for small businesses. We don't know exactly when. It will be available to standard business subscribers. However, due to the needing to lock down identities and information to a greater extent, you're probably not going to want to use business standard. You're going to look at business premium ME3 or ME5 because those provide the security and compliance features that allow for the safe using of it. I see a file path in here that I only see trying to buy it through the purchase services. It's just not available through any purchasing channel at this time. The demo that I'm showing you is an early access license because I work for Pax8, which is a global distributor for Microsoft. They gave us a few licenses for purposes like this, right? To be able to make people aware and educate. And I think I think we covered just about everything in that.
I'm going to tease, this is our last event of the year. Thank you everyone for attending. Next up in early 2024, we're in discussions with Eva Ben, who is a security specialist for Microsoft. She is concerned about security controls around artificial intelligence, so that should be a fascinating conversation. We've also invited Eric Huffman, Dr. Eric Huffman, back for a presentation in February about the cyber psychology of artificial intelligence. So that should be fascinating too. That will be on Leap Day. And I will end with just a mention of next steps. So these are some things that you can do right now. Again, as we mentioned a minute ago, use Bing Chat Enterprise. It's a way for you to get familiar with these tools. You could consider Teams Premium now if you want that ability to summarize Teams conversations, Teams meetings. Connect with EXP Technical if you have questions about security, because as has been highlighted in this meeting, it's appropriate. You need to be sure that people have appropriate access and not inappropriate access before you give them access to this tool, because it can be a powerful tool for them to use, maybe inadvertently the wrong way. And I think that does it. Whoops, I'm losing my tech here. So Austin, thank you so much for joining us for this preview. I really appreciate you taking the time. For everyone in attendance, I appreciate you for taking the time too. We're a couple minutes over. I think I will end there. Austin, any final words, one last goodbye or anything else to say before we close?
I just appreciate everybody's attendance and participation. This is the most questions I've ever seen in a Q&A, where it was almost hard to, it was hard. It was almost impossible to keep up with you guys. We almost might want to do maybe another one of these in the new year that's more of just a straight Q&A and less formal content, just so that we can give each question the time to thoroughly answer it as much as possible. But thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be a part of this with you.
And I love that idea. In fact, I will make it happen. That sounds like a great idea, a little bit more interactive and a little bit more directly interactive in the future. So on that, I will thank everyone for attending. And Austin, once again, thank you for your time, and we'll call this meeting closed. Thanks again.